Good day, everyone. It's Duncan from Overland Journals. Welcome to the third part of my conversations with my good friend Terry Clarke, who shares with me his travels from the early 60s. In today's episode, pretty exciting, he talks about how he feels, why he feels today's roads are a lot less safer compared to back then. You might find that strange, but watch out for the video. We'll explain why. How in an age when there was no communications equipment like we have, high-tech stuff, handheld radios and so on, how they managed to communicate. Tells us about a property that exists out there in the outback, which is bigger than London. So stay tuned for that one. And he also talks about some of the bush mechanic work they had to do during that trip. In today's part, Terry is going to talk about the actual route itself. In the previous two parts, we talked about how he ended up in Australia all the way from the UK, and then the second part we talked about the vehicle, how we prepped it up. If you missed those, go check them out, link above and in the description below. Today, pretty excited, we're going to talk about the route. Hi Terry, welcome back, and thank you for joining us again for this third part of the series that I'm having a chat with you. In the first one, we spoke about your story, how you ended up in Australia, and your time spent in Woomera and places like that. So that was quite interesting in a brief nutshell. Now, I thought I would love to. Second part, we talked about the vehicle itself and how you prepped it, or which pretty much you didn't. You traveled stock standard. So today, I'm looking forward to hearing the route itself, what you experienced along the way. And so on, because I know you and I have had off camera, we've had chats about your trip, but this part onwards, I'm pretty excited because we haven't touched in deep conversation. So that's very good. So I'll leave you to it, Terry. Go for it.
Well, there's not much I can remember actually. It's that long ago. It's nearly 60 years. Do you realise that? It'll be next year will be the 60th anniversary of this
I know.
trip.
So that makes this series even more special.
Yes. the route started roughly in Adelaide, just north of
Yeah.
Adelaide. And it was bitumen
Yeah.
road, blacktop, all the way to Port Augusta,
Right.
which is 300 kilometres in today's
Yeah.
money. Then the road stopped and dirt road commenced. The bitumen
Right.
stopped, the dirt road commenced. As we were leaving Port Augusta, we were probably 200 metres onto the dirt road. A taxi came past
All
us.
right. Okay.
And that was the last vehicle that passed us in the 5 days it took to get to Alice Springs.
Whoa.
And we passed nobody.
So you were pretty much on your own, the two vehicles.
On our own, just the two
Yeah.
of us. And the interesting thing that's happened since they've bitumised the road, now there's bitumen all the way to Alice
Yes.
Springs.
Yeah.
When they build the road, they put a camber on it so the rain runs off of the
Yeah. So
bitumen.
kind of like sloping. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's happened is that because the road has been there quite a while, they finished the road to Woomera bitumen road to Woomera in 1983. Yep. So that's 30 plus years since the road to Woomera was bitumised, and a lot of undergrowth has grown up on the sides now.
Yes.
Because it gets fed by the rain.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
And although those vehicles can now travel much safer on bitumen, and they travel faster.
Absolutely.
You've got the added problem now of sheep or kangaroos or emus coming out of the bush, whereas before you could see for miles ahead,
yes,
either side of the road, and if there was a kangaroo, you could slow down. But now, particularly sheep, because they're only short, kangaroos, they're a bit taller, but they just come out of the undergrowth, which they didn't do before. So although the road is much safer because it's bitumen, people are travelling
Yeah.
faster and getting caught out the uh, by the animals that can come across in front
That's
of them.
quite true, because now when like the recent trips I did, you see so much of roadkill, and I haven't hit any so far, but I've had near misses because they just come out of the blue, and in fact for that reason I've stopped driving at night altogether, because it just doesn't help.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's very
yeah,
sensible. But see, emus, they're not too bad because they're fairly
yeah.
tall, and you can see their heads above the undergrowth. But they usually travel in pairs.
Yes, yeah.
So if you see if an emu comes across the front of you, don't think you're free, because there's every chance that
To
another one will
come.
be about 30 or 40 yards behind
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
So you've got to be really, really
yeah,
vigilant these
yeah.
days compared with the
Yes,
past.
absolutely. Yeah, that I never thought of it, because I've only traveled on bitumen in the traveling I've done. So I never realized that it was actually in a funny way, as difficult as it was back then in the 60s and so on. It was, in a funny way, it was safer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And also with the higher speeds, of course, and more
Yeah,
trucks. There's a lot more trucks on the road
yeah,
now. And once you get involved with a truck on the bitumen
yeah,
road, you've got to get past it with traffic coming the other way. But in the old days, there weren't any
no,
trucks. There were very, very, very few
yeah,
trucks. So there've been a lot of changes in that area. So we left Port Augusta. A taxi passed us just after, literally a few hundred yards. Nothing passed us, and we passed nothing. As I mentioned before, we went through Woomera and went out the back of Woomera. Then we came through to Kingunya was on the main
yeah,
route at the
yeah.
time. Glendambo wasn't there.
Right. Okay.
Then, of course, it was up through very empty country, past the Twins, which we talked about last
Yes.
time. Now, the Twins, Sharon and Wayne, who own the Twins, also own the property on the western side of the Sturt
Yeah.
Highway, which is McDool
Okay.
Peak. And to give some of
Terry,
you,
just to stop you there, just for the benefit of those who might not know. So when you say Twins, that's the name of the cattle station, right?
that's
Yeah,
right,
cattle
yes,
ranches in like the US and places. At some
yeah.
point, if you can just also, for the benefit of especially those who are viewing this from outside of Australia, if you can just give them a idea of the enormity of the size of these stations, that'll be good at some point.
Yes, well, now's the time to
Yeah,
do that, because as we went up through the Twins and McDool Peak, if you took the area of the Twins and McDool Peak and transplanted it on
yeah.
London, then it would go to the west, to the western boundary of the
Right.
M25.
That M20,
It would go
M25 is the sort of like the
is the one that goes
around. It's like a ring road.
around London. It's the circular road around
Yeah,
London. And most people know that's a fair
yeah,
distance. It would go to the eastern boundary of the
yeah.
M25. It would go down as far as Brighton,
Okay.
which is 52 miles south of
Yeah.
London, and it would go 25 miles north of the northern part of the
Wow, that's
M25.
pretty much bigger than London.
Oh, far bigger, far bigger. It's you imagine London to Brighton is 52
Yeah,
miles, or what is it in today's language, 75
yeah,
kilometres. So you could. They used to say that they could ride on horses, as they used a lot in those
yeah.
days. They could ride for 3 days and still be on their property.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine from the US some time back, and I was trying to give him an idea of how enormous and how sparse Australia is. So, if you take South Australia, that's just the state we live in. We have a population of what, 1.6, well, nearing 1.
Nearly 2 million. Yeah, getting towards 2 million now.
But of that, 1.5, 1.6 lives here in Adelaide. The rest is scattered around the country. So the bulk of the population is in the capital city where I am right now. But the entire state is, I think, almost 1 million square kilometers. So the distances we have to cover, and of course the off-roading that we get to do and remote travel is just enormous, which is good for us. But that puts it in context of just how enormous our country is.
Yeah. Well, we were doing about 200 miles a day.
Right, yeah.
Stopping for lunch and that sort of thing. And, of course, we had no communications in those days. There was no radio.
Yeah. Well,
so our communication system was headlights and horn. So if the one at the back wanted to say something to the one at the front, he'd be quite a few hundred yards behind because of the dust problem. So you flash it, the one at the back would flash the headlights, the one at the front would pull over, and you'd stop and you'd have your discussion. Like, let's stop for morning tea or whatever. So communications were very, very basic. And there were fuel stops along the way at places that are still there. But very little in the way of facilities at those places. No caravan parks and things like that like there is today. Nowhere, you just pick your spot and park and get your dinner ready or whatever. And sometimes you go and shoot your dinner. Because there were kangaroos around, there were pigeons. We found that the young kangaroos, the thigh of the young kangaroo was just like a very sweet, soft pork.
Oh, right.
Yeah, very, very tasty meal. And of course, we're talking about 60 years ago when there weren't the restrictions on shooting and owning firearms and all that sort of thing. And we're all three guys were military people. So we knew how to handle a rifle, and we were very safe with them because it had been drummed into us during our military training that, put the safety catch on.
And it makes sense because, at that time, we couldn't, unlike today, we got fridges to carry meat, keep them from going bad. All we have to do is walk into a supermarket and get pre-packed meats and so on. But whereas in those days, there was none of that.
No, not at all. Not at all. So we just trundled along. We weren't in any huge hurry. We had a time limit, but and we had a few incidents along the way, as you saw from the movie stuff, which you've got.
Oh yeah, if you can touch on a couple of those, that'll be interesting for the benefit of the viewers.
You'll see in the movie we got bogged at various times in the bull dust. Even the Volkswagen, even the Beetle got bogged. But that's okay. If you treat it as part of the trip, it doesn't become a problem.
Correct. Yes.
And on the way back, I'll tell you the story later. We actually ran out of tyres for the Volkswagen.
Oh, that's interesting.
Between Woomera, I'll tell the story now. Between Woomera and Port Augusta, on the way back to Adelaide, we did our last remaining tyre on the Volkswagen, and didn't pick it up straight away, which is often the case on the rough roads. You can run for quite a while without realising you've got a tyre going flat. And we just about ruined this tyre, and there was no way of pumping it up again because we didn't have compressors. We actually had a hand pump with us, up and down. We were fit young lads in those days.
We're lazy today.
And if only. Yeah, so what did we do? Well, as I've mentioned previously, the Volkswagen was soundproofed
Yes.
with lots of
Yes, you
felt.
mentioned that last time.
So we took the wheel off, half lifted the tyre off with tyre levers, which we
Yeah.
had, and it was too badly ruined to repair from a puncture point of view. We had some gaiters with us and that, but it was too far gone for
Yeah.
that. So we just stuffed the felt soundproofing into the
Oh,
tyre,
wow. Okay.
filled it up with felt, crammed it all in, and as I say, there's three young guys. We bit of strength. It was easy. We managed it, and that got us almost 20 miles down the road.
Whoa, that's fantastic.
Before it all compacted down and the tyre started really thumping again. So then we sacrificed the carpets from inside the car and put those in. That got us another probably 20 miles. And then we were we were left with the option of how do we get to Port Augusta. And we started cutting down the local bushes, the little bushes at the side of the road, which weren't very big. And there's six of us. So the three girls and one of the guys was cutting down trees, bush twigs and leaves. And two guys were feeding them into the tube, into the tyre. And we eventually got to Port Augusta, where it was easy to buy a tyre there because it was a fairly big town even then. And the Volkswagen was a popular vehicle, so there was no problem getting the right size tyres.
Well, but that's the thing, because that's something we say to many people buying 4x4s and going outback or remote even today. Stick to a popular size tire and try and stick to a popular vehicle, because when you have a problem out there, that's when it really matters.
Yes, it does, and you can ring if you've got a popular vehicle. You can ring now, and they can get you a spare part fairly quickly, and that's part of another story from another trip which I did, where we actually broke a front axle on a vehicle a long way from anywhere. But were mobile again by sheer chance within 24 hours.
There you go. That's the
and that's the sort of thing that would happen today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, since they've bitumised that road, they've put down in a couple of places on the way to Alice Springs, they've put down landing strips for the Royal Flying Doctor Service.
Yes, I've seen those. Yes,
they've got a long straight piece of bitumen. They put piano keys either end, like a normal landing place. They clear the shrub really well off the sides, and if there's accidents and emergencies on the road, they can now send the flying doctor in.
So much easier, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's become necessary now because there's more accidents.
Yeah. Well, that's something you didn't have back in the 60s. Yeah.
No, not at all. We had the flying doctor, but he was restricted to Outback Station, which was still dirt landing for it, but they kept it in good. The station owners kept it in good condition because they were using it themselves regularly.
Yeah. Any other?
And
there
was lots of things along the way that we came across, which today to the average Australian is normal, but to a group of guys from England was totally different, like windmills.
Right, okay.
You see windmills at the side of the road pumping water into a tank. And you don't see that in Brixton, in London.
No, I can.
It's and in fact, because the weather was reasonably warm, we actually swam in the tanks. And it was quite a relief after lots of lots of dusty road and chopping and changing and stopping and getting bogged and that sort of thing. It was a real pleasure to have a
I wish we
swim.
could do that today, because today what we do is we go, check into some place and go into a shower if that's available. But otherwise,
Yes.
there's no places we can do.
We didn't have that. Didn't have showers.
Yeah, but
along
we,
the
we
way.
don't have places we can dip into now. Hardly any.
No. We carried quite a lot of water with
Yeah.
us in 5-gallon containers, but it was mostly in the Falcon.
Right, yeah.
See, the Falcon had 4 people
Yeah.
in it. They had 3 across the front on a bench
Yeah.
seat, 1 in the back,
And
no seat belts, surrounded by luggage.
and you prayed that you didn't have a topple or whatever, because you're going to have all those cargo running around at the back.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, we eventually got to Alice without really too many problems. The only problems were getting bogged occasionally,
Yep.
and quite a few kangaroos
Yep.
around, a few emus, which were again from people from London were quite novelties. And the other curiosity was the local Aboriginal
Yeah,
people.
okay. Now I'm going to stop you there, because I think we're going to end up our third part here, because what you saw, the local cultures that you experienced, that's going to be pretty interesting. So we're going to leave that to the third part, or the fourth
Right,
the fourth
okay.
part.
Fourth
Fourth part,
part,
yes, I'm losing track here. But yeah, and to the viewers, so there you go. So another very interesting conversation with Terry. So please look out for the next part, which will come in a week's time, where Terry talks about the experiences he had when he got to Alice, the local cultures, and a whole lot of other things. So, and if you have missed the previous parts, please do go check them out. I'll leave links above and in the description below. And thanks for watching. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Tell everyone else about it. If you haven't subscribed already to my channel, please do subscribe. And look out for another episode coming out with Terry in a week's time. Thanks for watching.